This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Christopher Mitchell, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, Legendary Ray Ray, and Ash, and brought to you by Ash, who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member, and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, you'll get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Also, while I have you, please consider liking the video and subscribing, since it costs you nothing, and really helps the channel to grow. With that out of the way, let's get on with the story. We pick back up with our group of 4 on Route 216, having spent much of the last fortnight trekking through the frozen tundra that connects Snow Point City to Mount Coronet. Due to their destination being Veilstone City, this had been the most direct and efficient path, something that Ash, Paul, and Maylene had all shockingly agreed upon, as the only other option would be to catch a boat, but that would have still taken time, and then deposited them somewhere just as far south from where they want to be as Snow Point is north. To this end, the 3 young men had loaded up on cold weather gear and begun their march, while Maylene, in an act of either pure grit or utter madness, had chosen to brave the snow in her usual attire, calling it good endurance training for when she comes to visit Candace. Naturally, the fact that this weather had made the pink-haired girl happy only caused Paul to grow more surly, though having been rugged up under a scarf that covered his mouth and nose while a thick woolen hat hung down to his brow, the only indication of this had been his angry little eyes glaring out from beneath all the padding. Additionally, these extra layers, along with the howling winds, had not given much room for conversation, which had dismayed Ash to no end, as he'd wanted to try and talk things over with his brother now that the icy condition had cooled his anger somewhat, a plan hampered further by the fact that whenever they stopped to make camp, all 4 of them would be so exhausted from fighting the weather that they could do little more than eat whatever was at hand, then crawl into their sleeping bags to rest and ready their bodies for the rigors of tomorrow. In the few instances Ash had actually managed to get a chance to speak with Paul, such as when they found a small cave in the side of a cliff and decided to hunker down early for the day, the other boy had either ignored him entirely or given only terse responses that barely qualified as more than grunts. Instead, Paul's attention had all been directed at his Pokemon, insisting that they use these harsh conditions for further training with that same unhealthy zeal he'd had since leaving Hearthome. Ironically, this had given him more in common with Maylene than anyone would dare say, as she too had made the most of the weather, though while Paul's training had seemed like ruthlessly forcing his teammates to fight nature itself, she had instead used it to synergize with her usual routine for increased gains, all the while keeping things fun and fiery in a way that Ash could not help but respect. In an attempt not to fall behind, Ash had trained too, though his had been the least intense, as due to 2/3 of his party being small first stage Pokemon, and the other 2 having ice-type weaknesses, they had not been particularly well equipped for the blizzard. That is aside from Ponyta, who had quite happily cantered through the snow like he did on the way to Snow Point, right up until the moment that enough of it melted and became water, at which point the Firefall had galloped away in fright. Thankfully, there had been another option for Ash in the way of training, with this being to hone his innate aura abilities alongside Riley and Riolu, the former of whom had been happy to help guide trainer and Pokemon alike, as he could see their aura bond had grown strong in his absence, though just how strong had come as a shock even to him, as when Ash had told him about his and Riolu's aura vision connection, the man had burst into a wide smile, as this was proof positive that the 2 of them were always destined to be together, since aura vision is a rare gift even among aura guardians, and one worth fostering. To this end, the 3 of them had set to work whenever they made camp, with Riley proving a capable teacher, since just as he was able to see what Paul would respond to, with Ash and Riolu he had lent more into games, having them play hide and seek to sense the auras of their other teammates hiding around camp, or else blindfolded Ash and forced him to use Riolu's eyes to see how many fingers he was holding up. Through this play-based learning, the young pup and its purple-haired partner had strengthened their bond, both as friends and aura users, though as Riley knew well, to do one is to do the other, hence his mounting concerns around Paul. And so it is that as the group now visit the Route 216 way station, which serves as the final stop before Mount Coronet, all 3 kids show signs of significant growth in their respective pursuits, admittedly at varying levels of cost. Nonetheless, the mouth of the mountain tunnel ahead of them is a welcome sight to all of them, with Paul wordlessly taking the lead now that snow isn't slowing him down, since he cannot abide the thought of wasting another second. Due to having the longest legs, Riley files in close behind him, while Ash and Maylene bring up the rear, since they both want to check this part of the mountain out fully and see what kind of Pokemon live here. Due to being a cave, Zubat and Golbat naturally abound, though they also catch sight of a couple of Bronzor floating through the air, and even a Clefairy which Ash considers trying to battle and catch until it slips away, and Paul barks at him to hurry up since he's not slowing down so his brother can waste time. Testily, Ash protests that he wasn't wasting time, with his words echoing off the cave walls to create the impression of a dozen Ashes lambasting Paul. Though, be it 1 or 100 of his brother, the scowling boy does not seem to care, just grunting and carrying on. However, this is not to say that no one cares, as a few minutes later, while passing by an underground lake, a soft voice flatly asks if one of them was yelling so loudly. Looking across the water, the courtheads see a man with spiky pale blue hair and a gaunt face that makes his age rather hard to judge, as he could be 27 or 57 just as easily. From the sternness of his gaze, Ash figures this man did not appreciate his argument with Paul, and so apologetically admits that it was his fault, to which the man sighs that he suspected it was him from a glance, since it is plain to see that he is spirited. The way this stranger says the last word almost makes it sound dirty, with Ash questioning what's wrong with being spirited, though having already grown fed up with this encounter, Paul cuts him off, demanding to know just who he is and what he wants anyway. Turning his beady black eyes on the other brother now, the man answers that this is of no concern, though having travelled with Paul long enough to know that this answer won't satisfy him, Riley fills him in, stating that this is Cyrus, the Sunny Shore gym leader. Just as how Cyrus had reacted strangely to Ash's spirit, the purple-haired boy notices something odd in Riley's voice, a seeming tension perhaps that is uncommon for the usually friendly Aura Guardian. In fact, he is not the only one, as at Ash's side Riolu growls softly while adopting a somewhat protective stance, as if it intends to defend Ash from Cyrus. Figuring they must be sensing something he's not, the youngest Veilstone brother leans over to ask his Aura mentor what's happening, to which Riley instructs him to reach out and see for himself. Knowing he does not mean see in the literal sense, Ash closes his eyes and allows the aura to guide him. By now, he's gotten pretty good at recognizing the patterns of Riley, Riolu, Maylene, and even Paul's dark and stormy aura, though he can also sense beyond them, feeling the other Pokemon of the cave, even those he cannot see. However, what he cannot sense is Cyrus, with the man being like a blind spot, or more chillingly, like something dead. Seeing the change in Ash's expression that means he's felt it too, Riley nods, before placing his hand on the boy's shoulder and helping him focus. With this, Ash is at last able to sense the tiny trace of aura that proves that the gym leader is indeed still alive, though truthfully, it was less disconcerting when he seemed dead, as the thin veneer of aura coming from Cyrus is the darkest and coldest Ash has ever felt, to the point where it makes the tundra they just left seem positively sunny in comparison. But that is not the only troubling part about it, as the more the boy feels it, the more he can tell that it is familiar to him, as while this is only faint while his brother burns with life energy, in every other regard, it is almost identical to Paul's aura. Feeling Ash's distress through his own aura, Riolu instinctively runs to hug his leg, while Riley releases his hold and reassures him that it is not quite as bad as he thinks, since Paul's aura is still a few shades lighter than this man's, so he's not that far gone. Though this is why he's been so concerned about the elder twin, since if he does not change his path soon, this is what he will become. And speaking of Paul and Cyrus, while the others have been having their own whispered conversation, they have continued addressing each other, with Paul requesting a battle, since he wants to test how much stronger his Pokemon have become before he sicks them on Aaron. However, this is flatly refused, as Cyrus bluntly states that he has no interest in unsanctioned battles as they are a waste of time, so should the purple-haired youth or his companions wish to face him, they must do it in his gym, as that is the designated space for such things. Not being in the sort of mindset to take no for an answer, Paul does not relent, heatedly reminding the man of his duties as a gym leader, though now that he too has shown himself to be spirited, Cyrus has no desire to listen to him, turning away from the group and ascending a nearby stone staircase leading further up the mountain. Having mostly stayed quiet during this encounter, Maylene scoffs that this guy seems like a real ray of sunshine, to which Riley good-naturedly agrees, while Paul just growls that he'll see if he's still as high and mighty when they get to Sunny Shore, since while he'd planned to go there last so he could visit the Great Marsh beforehand, maybe he'll make a detour to challenge Cyrus once he's done with the Veilstone gym. Fortunately, nothing else of note occurs within the cave which might hamper this goal, with the four companions soon finding themselves in Celestic Town, a fact which pleases Riley, as he claims that throughout all his travels, this town has become one of his favourite places in Sinnoh, due to the veneration it gives to tradition and lore. While this does interest Ash, who would be happy to stick around and explore a little, Paul and Maylene are both more interested in challenging Aaron, with the younger brother ultimately relenting, since he is also keen to get his next badge. As a result, they only stay overnight, long enough for Nurse Joy to tend to all their Pokemon before continuing on down Route 210 and 215. Now that there are no environmental distractions, Ash tries harder than ever to get his brother alone so they can talk, since now that he's seen Paul's future, he's even more determined to snap him out of the funk he's in. However, all the determination in the world isn't worth much when the other person doesn't want to listen, as try though he might, Ash simply cannot get through to Paul, who seems impervious to his yelling, reasoning, pleading, and any other tactic he can think up to try and make him see sense. Meanwhile, Riley and Maylene also have their first proper chance to get to know each other, as with the twins occupied arguing over Paul's behavior and attitude, the pair of them need to find new ways to fill their time. Having seen the navy-haired man working with Ash and his Riolu, Maylene requests he take a look at hers, with the Aura Guardian being happy to accept. As a result, one evening when the group have made camp, the young fighting specialist calls forth her Riolu, while Riley reaches out to feel its aura. As he'd expected, it is perfectly happy and healthy, having developed a strong bond with its trainer, even if it isn't quite as intense as Ash's bond with his own Riolu. Additionally, he feels the potential for impressive power within it, claiming that with hard work, it could grow beyond all her other Pokemon. Growing quite excited by this prospect, Riolu makes a determined fist, while Maylene promises to do all she can to help the blue pup achieve this goal, which includes battling Riley and his Lucario one of these days. Smiling softly, the Aura Guardian assures her that he will happily face her whenever she wishes, with this earning him a smile in return, as she grins that for now they're going to keep training, though she will definitely take him up on that offer before their journey ends. And speaking of, about a week later, this leg of the journey comes to an end, with the four companions spotting Veilstone City on the horizon. Seeing their goal is close at hand, the three young trainers all put a bit of extra spring into their step, so that by lunchtime they are within the city proper. Without needing to exchange a word, everyone knows where their first stop will be, and so keeping up that accelerated pace, they all make tracks for the gym. Only to find a large closed sign on the door, and a note claiming that Aaron is away on business and won't be back for a while. Naturally, this comes as a blow to all three challengers, though Paul more so than the others as his feelings towards Aaron are the strongest. To this end, he immediately insists they get back on the road and go to Pastoria or Sunyshore City, so he can earn his remaining badges. However, this time Ash does actively push back against him, stating they can go do that soon, but before they leave Veilstone, they need to at least pay Reggie a visit. Harumphing in a way that makes it very clear Paul disagrees, the purple-haired youth crosses his arms and glowers sullenly. Though when Ash just glares right back at him with even more ferocity, Paul scoffs that fine. He guesses he can use this time to see if his pathetic Miss Magus has gotten any stronger in his absence. Subsequently, Ash and Paul lead the familiar way back to their house while Riley and Maylene follow behind. At the sight of them coming down the street, Reggie's face splits into its usual warm smile, and having missed his eldest brother, Ash breaks away from Paul to run up and hug him. Unsurprisingly, Paul does not follow suit, approaching Reggie at his regular pace and giving him a nod of greeting when they draw close. Though unperturbed by what has become a pattern of behavior, Reggie simply smiles at him and asks how his journey's going. Coolly, the younger brother recounts all that has happened since they parted ways in Floroma Town, with Reggie remaining silent throughout, since he knows nothing will come of interrupting Paul now that he's opening up a little. Instead, he listens intently, before simply claiming that he's glad he's safe, and turning his attention to their guests. As they're acquainted, he first greets Maylene, thanking her for sticking with his brothers in spite of everything that's going on, though this just earns a wave from the pink-haired girl, who claims that's what rivals are for. As for Riley, due to having heard about him but never met him, the long-haired breeder extends a hand to shake, with the Aura Guardian in turn smiling that it's good to meet him at last, since Ash talks about him a lot. Choosing not to address the unspoken part of that statement, Reggie instead invites everyone inside, where Ash is delighted to see Luxray, as the Lightning Lynx barrels him over and licks his face affectionately after their time apart. In contrast, Paul sees no sign of Miss Magus, and so dispassionately questions if his brother ever received it. From the tone of Reggie's voice, Paul had been correct to assume that he would not appreciate this unannounced dumping of an additional Pokemon in his care, though all the same he does confirm that the magical Pokemon is here, it's just resting, since it prefers to come out after dark. Huffing in a way that suggests Miss Magus has let him down again, Paul does not bother joining the others in the living room, instead stomping off likely towards his bedroom, though this is perhaps for the best, as it allows Ash to speak with his eldest brother more candidly, as in truth, part of the reason he had been so insistent on coming back here was to seek Reggie's help, since as he can see Paul has gotten even colder and more fixated on power since their battle. Sighing deeply, Reggie agrees that this certainly does appear to be the case, before asking the boy to go over things from his point of view. Helpfully, Ash does so, recounting his own journey from Floroma to Snowpoint, though he does grow somewhat sheepish when he reaches the part of the story that involves him punching Paul. Unsurprisingly, this earns him a disapproving sigh and a shake of the head from his big brother, though strangely enough, Reggie does admit that he might have been on the right track but for the wrong reason there. Blinking in confusion, Ash asks if his bro means he should punch Paul again, though chuckling a little, Reggie replies that no, he most certainly should not do that again. What he means is that right now Paul only cares about power, so what he needs is to see that power and kindness can go hand in hand, and that the latter is a path to the former rather than a weakness. Looking at Paul's recent actions, he's pretty sure that part of him can already see that. That's why he reacted so strongly to his loss to Maylene and then his draw with Ash, since their training styles made them stronger than he believes should be possible. So he thinks the best thing now would be for the twins to battle again, since if Ash can beat him this time, then maybe it'll serve as the wake-up slap Paul needs. Sighing deeply, Ash admits that he tried to battle him back in Snowpoint but Paul refused, claiming that he doesn't want to face him again until the League, with this putting a thoughtful frown on Reggie's face as he contemplates what else they can do to help their brother. Clearing his throat a little, Riley asks if he may make a suggestion, to which Reggie nods by all means, since he's been keeping an eye on Paul for a while, so any insight he may have gained would be greatly appreciated. Smiling warmly at these words, Riley thanks the breeder, before stating that he quite agrees, a defeat at the hands of his kind-hearted brother might be enough to help Paul, though, as he need not point out, Ash isn't the only one who fits that description. A few hours later, the brothers and their guests reconvene for dinner, with Reggie making sure to prepare some of Ash and Paul's favourites as part of an impromptu homecoming celebration. Naturally, Ash is delighted, digging in heartily while Maylene follows suit, matching him bowl for bowl. As for Paul, he eats quietly, still clearly agitated about Aaron's absence and to a lesser degree Cyrus's refusal to battle him, with Reggie choosing to capitalize on this, as he casually attempts to engage his brother in conversation about these setbacks. Tersely, the middle child expresses his frustration as he wanted to show Aaron how much stronger he's gotten, with this being exactly what the breeder had been hoping for, as he blithely asks why doesn't he show him instead. Brow furrowing, Paul asks if his brother is challenging him to a rematch, with this question being met with a nod, as Reggie smiles that he wants to see what his little brother's new philosophy has granted him. Being smart enough to see through this breezy affectation, Paul states in no uncertain terms that he knows what he's doing. But he always intended to surpass Reggie someday, so he accepts, though he wants more than a simple 1v1 this time. Nodding, the long-haired man proposes a best of three, a format Paul finds acceptable, so that when dinner is over, everyone gathers in the backyard to watch this fated battle of brothers. For their first choices, both go with the Pokemon they used in their last battle, Grotle for Paul and Staraptor for Reggie, a decision the breeder finds curious, as he wouldn't have expected Paul to willingly give himself a type disadvantage, though he's certain this was neither a mistake nor an errant whim, as his brother is too tactical a battler for such things, so if he's chosen this, he must have a strategy in mind. However, he has a strategy too, one that he puts into play almost immediately, as he tells Staraptor to use Wing Attack, with the great bird of prey letting out a core and then diving downwards. Having expected nothing else, Paul has Grotle meet this with Bite, clamping down on the wing and holding Staraptor in place, since now it is much more familiar with its added weight and can use this to its advantage. Though this is not all Paul does, as now that the normal flying type is unable to escape, he unleashes a point-blank Toxic, with the sight of the bird sporting the familiar purple rash being a deeply cathartic one for the boy and his starter. Refusing to go down without a fight, Reggie next has Staraptor strike back with Brave Bird, using the brief burst of flame to do some super effective damage to Grotle. Then, when it recoils in shock and pain, the Predator Pokemon takes flight once more, performing an aerial 180 before dive-bombing the discombobulated turtle for massive damage. For a moment, Ash, Maylene and Riley all wonder if this is the end, though here they are proven dead wrong, as when Staraptor attempts to fly away from its victim, green energy tendrils burst forth from Grotle's back and bind the bird. Coldly, Paul then states that this is Mega Drain, the next evolution of Grotle's Absorb attack, a revelation that comes as a shock to everyone but Riley, who had witnessed Paul and Grotle attain this during their travel to Snowpoint. As part of this evolution, the Grass Star's hold is significantly stronger, with it seeming that Staraptor is truly doomed to have its energy sucked out, that is if the poison coursing through its veins doesn't claim it first. And were this any other opponent, this might be true, but knowing Paul almost as well as he knows himself, Reggie had anticipated some similarly vengeful tactic, since he's come to realize the point of choosing Grotle was to get revenge on him and Staraptor for last time. Subsequently, he has a counter in place, telling the normal flyer to stop resisting. At once, the bird of prey begins falling back towards Groddle. Then, when it's in point-blank range, the breeder is a channel Brave Bird again, using this move like an afterburner to blast the Grove Pokemon back. As he does this, he lightly admonishes that in his anger Paul isn't learning from his mistakes, since that's twice now he's let Staraptor close enough to blast his starter with Brave Bird. However, it seems Paul disagrees, as when the avian descends for what may well be a match-ending blow, he has the grass type halt its attack with another Mega Drain around its wings. As he does this, he bluntly states that it's Reggie who hasn't figured it out yet. It doesn't matter how many times Staraptor hits Groddle with super effective attacks, since it, like him, is willing to do absolutely anything to win. At this pronouncement, the grass star takes on a glowing white hue as it more than doubles in size, while from its back bursts a tree that rises to smack Staraptor in the face. This is Torterra in all its ferocity. With this evolution also comes an immense spike in power, so that soon several more energy tendrils emerge and wrap themselves around the predator Pokemon's talons, beak and neck, all the while siphoning away more and more of its vitality. Were that not bad enough, the poison has well and truly taken hold by now, leaving Staraptor dazed in a lot of pain, to the point where it can barely hear as Reggie cries for it to do something again. As a result, when the last of its energy is stolen by a combination of Torterra and the poison, it almost eagerly succumbs to unconsciousness, giving the first win of the battle to Paul. In truth, no one had seen this ending coming. No one except Paul, that is, as when Torterra drops its prey and lumbers round to face him, he gives it an approving nod, since it did well, and showed everyone that they're not the same as they were back in Hearthome and Floroma. And that's where we'll leave things for now. How much has Paul really changed since his battle with Ash? Does Reggie have what it takes to turn this around and teach his brother a lesson? And can Paul truly mend his ways to avoid ending up like Cyrus? Find out as the journey continues.